Hello there, Lapora here. I am here to talk to you today about the most dangerous sin. And I know what you're about to say. There's no sin greater than another. I know many of us will say that. There's no greater sin than another. But there is one sin that is extremely dangerous. I've been bitten by this sin. I've done this sin myself several times and I fight against it. And that sin is self-righteousness. Yes, that self-righteousness sin, it shows up in a lot of different ways. And I will say it's the most dangerous sin because, well, for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's very, very sneaky. It's pride with the Bible. You can have that sin while you're literally on your knees praying. And a lot of times we don't realize we have the sin because a lot of times it masks itself as this false perfection, if you will. It shows up in different ways with us trusting our own spiritual track record. Oh, we haven't done this in a long time, or we haven't done that in a long time. And what it does, it gives us this pride, this haughtiness. And we know that pride comes before the fall. A haughty spirit comes before the fall, as it says in the book of Proverbs. And we know it to be true. We tell ourselves all these different stories. I'm above that now. I wouldn't do that now. I mean, that is the whole premise and importance of AA. A lot of people who go to addiction meetings, they will tell you once an addict is always an addict. And I'm a firm believer that, okay, maybe I don't have to label myself something forever. I agree with that. But what it does is it reminds us that it's all by God's grace. That it can only take one vulnerable moment, one distraction. And there we are in that situation again, whatever your situation of vulnerability is. But what self-righteousness tells us is that vulnerability doesn't exist because we haven't done that in 10 years or 1 year or whatever the period of time is for you. But it's one thing that we know that Christ has told us, that we can do all things through Christ Jesus. But sometimes we get to the point where we just say we can do all things. And if we leave out the Christ Jesus, that's where we get wrong, I will tell you, for years, I would see this one particular verse, and in my immaturity, pray without cease. Like, that just didn't make sense to me. I'm an action-oriented person. And sometimes, I would see praying as this passive activity of doing nothing, just giving it to God, which is an activity in itself. But I realized later, like, praying without cease, that is very powerful because for one, prayer is powerful, obviously. And the other reason is because the enemy is always busy. The enemy's not lazy. We might have bad days. We have days where we just want to chill, but the enemy is constantly busy. And that's why God is always telling us to pray without cease. It's not because he just loves the attention. It's because he knows that we need his attention. We need to talk to him to be connected with him. We need to listen to him to be connected to him. And sometimes we think we can just do it on our own. And sometimes it's not even a conscious decision to do it on our own. We just go out on our own because it feels natural, right? So the opposite of self-righteousness is that humility. And the power of humility is that it allows us to see those blind spots. It allows us to see those weaknesses. And most important to me is it allows me to receive God's covering. It allows me to be teachable, to receive his correction without getting offended, to receive the correction from others without getting offended. Because the day that you're perfect, the day that I'm perfect, I don't need Christ. And we know that day is never going to come. And so that's why self-righteousness is the most dangerous sin, because it tells us that we're perfect, that we're sinless. It tells us that we don't need Christ because we're doing it on our own. But that humility shows us we always need Christ. And there's no way you can be self-righteous if you realize that you need Christ. There's no way that you can think you're independent if you know you're dependent on God. You're never to that place where you've arrived. I'm never to that place where I've arrived. I'm here, I'm perfect, and I no longer need the crutch of God. That's a crutch I will always need and gladly walk with. So we need to look at ourselves and recognize there are rooms that we just do not need to go to because they're not going to be rooms that we can thrive in. There's going to be people that we cannot be around because they're not going to be good for what we want to do or not want to do. There's conversations that we just simply cannot have, gossiping that we simply cannot partake in, because we know it's going to take us to a place that we're not supposed to go, where our blessings are not going to be. You can get there, but God's blessings are not going to be. So it's not about the question of, am I strong enough? It's the question about, am I humble enough? Am I obedient enough? Am I relying enough on God's wisdom? So if you know there's an environment, a relationship, an activity that's going to stir up distractions from what God has from you, that's going to tempt you, walk the other way, because there's a specific path that God has for you. It's a specific path, and it's not about having fear. It's not about, oh, I'm afraid to walk in the dark alley, so to speak, but it's about having discernment. It's about having God's wisdom and walking in that, embracing yourselves in that. God's mercy is real. His protection is real. And so there's an order in how we need to move. Just like in your house, there's a certain order. There's a certain order that God has. And that first order is for you to submit to him. Secondly, to resist the devil. And thirdly, you know what's going to happen after that. He's going to flee. Now, the bad news is, the devil might come back. He's going to come back in different ways. He's going to move in different paths. He's going to come back sneakier every time he comes back. But every time you resist, guess what? He's going to leave again. So we stand in heaven's authority when we submit ourselves, when we acknowledge that it's not by our strength, it's not by our resume, it's not by what we've done or not done, but it's all by God's grace. It's all by God's protection, guidance, and direction. So we have to stop and we have to pray, because that reminds us of who is in control. And when I say stop, it doesn't mean always even that you're stopping what you're doing. To pray without cease, obviously God is not like, okay, you have to stop and be still and not do anything every single moment. What he is saying is that in every single thing, we need to be surrendering to him. What am I going to cook today? What am I going to eat? While I'm cooking, God, pray that you cover over the food as I'm walking across the street. God, please connect me with those people who you have for me to connect with. God, please remove those people who you don't have for me to connect with. We're asking him about everything. What should I wear? You're in the closet. What should I wear today, God? How do you want me to present myself? These are questions even myself I have to remind myself of. It's not as simple as we think. Sometimes we think every single decision, or all these decisions, are small decisions that really don't mean anything. But every single thing is spiritual. Every single thing on this earth is spiritual. So everything that we do is making a spiritual impact and being impacted by the spiritual realm. And I want what I do to be impacted by God. And so in order for me to do that, in order for you to do that, you have to submit to him, because you're going to be influenced by something spiritual. It's a matter of what. You hear people say, oh, I'm so spiritual. And guess what? They're right. They're right, because all of us, we are all very spiritual beings. But it's about, where is your spiritual power coming from? Where is the influence in your life coming from? And I'm constantly asking myself that, because I know that there are angels of light that aren't so light. And I want to know, when I want to do something, when I'm going in a direction, God, is that you? Because I need to know. Because if I'm following the wrong GPS, I need God to tell me, you're following the wrong GPS. You need to make another turn, because you just took the wrong turn. And I'm so grateful for that correction, because I got to get to where he needs for me to go. Because when I end up somewhere else, that's wasting my time. And so that's what I tell you, don't submit to that spirit of self-righteousness. I've been there time and time again, and it only leads me to the limit that I have for my life. But I know when I'm speaking to God, when I'm listening to God, his grace is there, and his grace is always going to be sufficient. The power that God has abiding over you right now is so powerful. It's so mighty. I don't care how small you think you are. I don't care how big you think you are. God's power is there, covering and protecting you. So I just urge you to stay teachable. There's so much more for you to learn and for you to attain and receive from God. Stay out of rooms where God does not have you to be. Stay in prayer without ceasing. That's how you're going to keep that most dangerous sin from taking root. And never forget who is holding you together as He is holding me together. If any of this resonates with you, please click the like button and share with someone who you care about, and have a blessed and amazing day. God bless you.